Om. Om. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Satgurum Tam Namami Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Sah Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Om Shri Krishna Paramatmane Namaha. Atha Shrimad Bhagavad Gita Navamodhyayaha Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yogaha Shri Bhagavanuvacha Idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshamyanasuyave Jnanam vijnana sahitam yajñātvā mokṣase shubhat Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitramidamuttamam Pratyakshavāgamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartum Avyayam Ashraddhānah Purusha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Aprapya Mam Nivartante Mrityu Samsara Vartmani Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavhyaktamurtina matsthani sarvabhutani nachaham teshvavastitaha nacha matsthani bhutani pashyame yogamaishwaram bhutabhrinna cha bhutasthaha mamatma bhutabhavanaha यथाकाशस्थितो नित्यं वायुः सर्वत्र गोमहान् तथा सर्वाणि भूतानि मत्स्थानीत्युपधारय सर्वभूतानि कौन्तेय प्रकृतिं यान्ति मामिकाम् कल्पक्षये पुनस्तानि कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम् प्रकृतिं स्वामवष्टभ्य विसृजामि पुनः पुनः भूतग्राममिमं कृत्स्नम् अवशं प्रकृतेर्वशात् न च मां तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय उदासीनवदासीनम् असक्तं तेषु कर्मसु मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः सूयते सचराचरम् हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय जगद्विपरिवर्तते। ओम तत्सत। जय गुरुदेव।
Verse 6 or 7, I repeat. 6 and 7, right? Yesterday we had seen verse 6 and 7. I'm repeating. यथाकाशस्थितो नित्यं वायु सर्वत्र गोमहान् तथा सर्वाणि भूतानि मत्स्थानीत्युपधारय. Just as the vast air, which goes everywhere, always exists in space, similarly, may you understand that all beings exist in me. The word yatha means just as. Shankara says here that it means just as in the world. Thus, just as in the world air, vayu, which moves from one place to another, sarvatraga, always exists in space. Nityam akashasthitah tatha. In the same manner, all beings exist in me, Ishvara. As Vayu moves from Kansas to New York or from there to India, it goes to a new place, but not to a new space. Sarvatra means everywhere, and Ga means the one who goes. Thus, Vayu is called Sarvatraga. It means that there is no place where he will not go. That is why he is also called Mahan. The word Mahan describes the dimension, that is, pervasiveness of Vayu. In terms of pervasiveness, Vayu is Mahan, great. So too, may you understand that all beings remain in me. Let them go anywhere. They are still in me. Just as how Vayu, no matter where it goes, is never away from Akasha. Similarly, all the Bhutas, whatever form they may assume, remain in me. But there is no burden imposed upon the Atma by all these beings existing in it. There is no imprint left in space by Vayu. The space is limitless, all-pervasive, and it is asanga, unconnected to Vayu. Even though Vayu cannot exist without space, it has its being in Akasha alone, and it moves around in Akasha. The example is used only to illustrate that the Atma is also asanga. It is unattached to anything, yet nothing is ever away from the Atma. As Vayu moves all over, but never moves away from space, all the Bhutas can move from one place to another. Whole worlds may come into being and collapse, but they are never away from the Atma. If the soul goes from here to Brahmaloka, the whole movement is in Brahman. Because the soul is Brahman, the Jagat is Brahman. There is nothing that is away from Brahman. If the self-conscious being moves from one place to another, the movement is in existence, the Satta. The soul is, and that is in Brahman, Atma. Therefore, it can never go away from Brahman. When you go to Brahmaloka, you are still the same Brahman. Even here you are Brahman. When you can recognize this here, why should you go elsewhere to recognize it? All movements, all beings, all transactions, all kinds of comings and goings and hidings are all in Brahman. Why does he say that all of them are in Brahman instead of saying all of them are Brahman? It is to make it clear that I remains untouched. Saying in me is like saying in space. Just as Vayu moves in space, leaving no imprint upon space, in the same way, all these beings exist in Atma Chaitanya and yet leave no imprint on Atma Chaitanya. May you recognize this clearly. Upadharaya. When Bhagavan says they exist in me, Matsthani, he is talking about the period of time when things exist. Sthiti Kala. At the time of their existence, all names and forms have their being in Parama Brahma. Like air moves in and has its being in space. But there are three aspects to any created thing. Its creation, Shrishti, existence or sustenance, Sthiti, and its destruction, Laya. Brahman is the cause for all these. If one were to ask, what happens during the destruction, Laya Kale? That is told in the next verse. Sarvabhutani Kaunteya Prakritim Yanti Mamikam Kalpakshaye Punastani Kalpadau Visrujamyaham. Kaunteya, O Arjuna, Kalpakshaye, at the dissolution of the cycle of creation, Sarva Bhutani, all beings, Mamikam Prakritim, to my Prakriti, Yanti, go, Punaha, again, Kalpa Adav, at the beginning of the cycle, Aham, I, Tani Visrujami, create them. Kaunteya Kalpakshaye Sarva Bhutani Mamikam Prakritim Yanti Punaha Kalpa Adav Aham Tani Visrujami. All beings, O Arjuna, go to my Prakriti at the dissolution of the cycle of creation. Again, at the beginning of the cycle, I create them. All beings, sentient and inert, Sarva Bhutani, go to my Prakriti. Mamikam Prakritim Yanti. He does not say to me, but to my Prakriti. In saying this, Krishna reveals a certain fact. When one cycle comes to an end, it is called Kalpakshaya, the completion or exhaustion of the cycle. At this time, all beings go into a state of dissolution in my Prakriti. We will not translate the word Prakriti here. Again, in the beginning of the cycle, Punaha Kalpa Adav, I release them, I project them. Tani Visrujami Aham. Here we prefix to the word Srij in Visrajami means I create each one. as it was in the previous cycle. So the creation is the same as it was in all other cycles. To fulfill the karmas of the jivas, again the cycle begins. Then it dissolves, and from the dissolved state, again the creation arises. The created world has its being in me, and the dissolved world goes into my upadhi. What is this upadhi? And why should the Lord bring it in? Why should he not say it goes back into me? A pot, for instance, comes out of clay and goes back to the clay. The clay does not say it goes back to my upadhi. The existence and dissolution of a given object takes place in the place from which it arises. When the pot is destroyed, it goes back to its cause, the clay. And from that same cause is its creation. From the clay, the pot is born. Into clay, it resolves. And while it exists, it has its existence in clay. What is under discussion here is the dissolution of the world into the Prakriti of Bhagavan. Since he says it goes into my Prakriti, it can be like saying it goes into my bank account. I am not my bank account. It is very clear. Similarly, here, Bhagavan's Prakriti is the place where the created world resolves. He says, the existence of the world is in me, Matsthani, but its dissolution, Laya, is into my Prakriti. This seems to be a contradiction because we have seen that if a thing has come from a given material cause, into that it resolves. If from Ishvara the world has come into Ishvara, the world should go back. But instead, he says it goes into my Prakriti. This is not a contradiction, but a deliberate expression. We will see why. Why does Bhagavan say my Prakriti when Bhagavan says all these beings have their beings in me, Matsthani, Sarva Bhutani? Are they attributes of Paramatma? If so, Paramatma has the intrinsic attribute of the Jagat and is always Saguna. Uh, my voice is breaking too much because there are notifications coming frequently. So please do let me know if it is breaking too much. I repeat, why does Bhagavan say my Prakriti when Bhagavan says all these beings have their being in me, Matsthani Sarva Bhutani? Are they attributes of Paramatma? If so, Paramatma has the intrinsic attribute of the Jagat and is always Saguna. If that is the case, Paramatma can never be free from those attributes. But our experience is entirely different. If we analyze the nature of Atma, we find it is free from all attributes. At any given moment, between two thoughts, what exists is Paramatma, which is Chaitanya, free from any form of limitation. Intrinsically, Paramatma is free from attributes, Nirguna. Only because of that is moksha possible. If Paramatma is intrinsically free from the Jagat, then when Bhagavan says, Matsthani, it exists in me, it is only through some other factor. That factor is what we call Maya. It is the Maya Upadhi that makes Paramatma into Ishvara. Purely due to Upadhi, Paramatma becomes all knowing and all powerful, the creator of everything. Due to a similar type of Upadhi, you have limited knowledge, Alpagnanatva, and so on. As Atma, your Swarupa is Sat Chit Ananda. It is pure consciousness which is Satya and limitless. Then how do you become one of limited knowledge, limited power, limited pervasiveness? Due to Upadhi. Upadhi gives rise to a point of view. You view the Atma from the standpoint of a physical body mind sense complex, then say, I am limited, etc. It's an unfortunate statement because it is not true. Atma has not become Alpagna. It continues to be Sat Chit Ananda. That is why I can say Tat Tvam Asi. You are Sat Chit Ananda. If someone asks, Swamiji, if I am Sat Chit Ananda, how do I become Alpagna? The question itself is wrong because Sat Chit Ananda does not become anything. If you are Sat Chit Ananda, you cannot become Alpagna. There is a notion that one was originally Sat Chit Ananda and gradually over a period of time due to a number of births became Alpagna. Then it has to evolve back. The contention is that we are all in the cycle of evolution. Evolution of what? If Sat Chit Ananda is to evolve, what will it become? Now it is limitless, free from attributes. What is the part of it that evolves? How can Sat existence evolve? The evolution of existence is only destruction. But this is an existence that is limitless. There is no possibility of evolution for such an existence. Can consciousness evolve? Something that has an attribute can evolve, but consciousness, which is pure existence, free from any attribute, cannot evolve. And as we have seen, it is limitless. Thus, there is no evolution for Sat Chit Ananda. Anything within samsara can evolve. You draw an arbitrary line, and any development beyond that you can call evolution. This human body may be an evolute because the human mind has a better capacity than the minds of other life forms. But the one who determines that this is an evolute is Alpagnya. And when you say, I am of limited knowledge, Alpagnyuham, that aham remains Sat Chit Ananda. The property of limited knowledge, Alpagnanatva, is purely an attribute, an incidental attribute attributed to you by taking a point of view. For example, a modern artist may draw a table from the perspective of one who is looking at it from a position of lying down. It may not look like a table at all. It is just a perspective. That kind of table is not found anywhere. Similarly, you look at Sat Chit Ananda from the perspective of your limping physical body, your aging brain cells, etc., and say, I have limited power, limited knowledge, limited pervasiveness. It is a perspective. Although the drawing had something to do with the table, this perspective has nothing to do with the table. The same is true with Sat Chit Ananda Atma. If being limited is your view of yourself, it is due to Upadhi and has nothing to do with Sat Chit Ananda. The same Sat Chit Ananda appears as though it is Alpagnya. Because it is limitless, there is nothing that is apart from Sat Chit Ananda. As the cause of everything, Sat Chit Ananda has to assume the status of being all-knowing, almighty. This we call God Ishvara. But the attributes like all-knowing and almighty are incidental attributes from the standpoint of the Jiva's way of looking at the world. And when you look at this world, the same Sat Chit Ananda becomes the onlooker as well as Ishvara, the cause of everything. All names are his names, all forms are his forms. Therefore, you have any number of words to describe Ishvara, all due to some upadhi called Maya Upadhi or Prakriti Upadhi. This is the whole essence of both the verses. I repeat this last paragraph. As the cause of everything, Sat Chit Ananda has to assume the status of being all-knowing, almighty. This we call God Ishvara. But the attributes like all-knowing and almighty are incidental attributes from the standpoint of the Jiva's way of looking at the world. And when you look at this world, the same Sat Chit Ananda becomes the onlooker as well as Ishvara, the cause of everything. All names are his names. All forms are his forms. Therefore, you have any number of words to describe Ishvara, all due to some upadhi called Maya Upadhi or Prakriti Upadhi. Therefore, when
Excuse me,
Krishna's...
can
Yeah,
you read the 3-4 lines where the starting is Parmeshwara, how Parmeshwar becomes Ishvara in the beginning?
yeah. Why does Bhagavan say Maya Prakriti? When Bhagavan says, all these beings have been in me, Madhsthani Sarva Bhutani, are they attributes of Paramatma? If so, Paramatma has the intrinsic attribute of the Jagat and is always Saguna. If that is the case, Paramatma can never be free from those attributes. But our experience is entirely different. If we analyze the nature of Atma, we find it is free from all attributes. At any given moment, between two thoughts, what exists is Paramatma, which is Chaitanya, free from any form of limitation. Intrinsically, Paramatma is free from attributes Nirguna. Only because of that is moksha possible. If Paramatma is intrinsically free from the Jagat, then when Bhagavan says Madhsthani it exists in me, it is only through some other factor. That factor is what we call Maya. It is the Maya Upadhi that makes Paramatma into Ishvara. Purely due to Upadhi, Paramatma becomes all knowing and all powerful, the creator of everything. Due to a similar type of Upadhi, you have limited knowledge, Alpagnatva, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
This is the takeaway line. With the same Upadhi, we believe that we are Alpagna, we are limited being. And with the same Upadhi, Paramatma becomes Ishvara, all pervading, all knowing, all powerful.
Thank you.
But,
Thank you.
yeah. But in fact, the reality is, as Atma, your Swarupa is Sat Chit Ananda. It is pure consciousness, which is Satya and limitless. It is only due to the Maya, or we call it Upadhi. So, as the cause of, I'm just repeating the last paragraph, since we have seen once again the perspective. The same is true with Satchidananda Atma. If being limited is your view of yourself, it is due to Upadhi and has nothing to do with Satchitananda. The same Satchitananda appears as though it is Alpagnya. Because it is limitless, there is nothing that is apart from Satchitananda. As the cause of everything, Satchit Ananda has to assume the status of being all-knowing, almighty. This we call God Ishvara, but the attributes like all-knowing and almighty are incidental attributes from the standpoint of the Jiva's way of looking at the world. And when you look at this world, the same Satchit Ananda becomes the onlooker as well as Ishvara, the cause of everything. All names are his names. All forms are his forms. Therefore, you have any number of words to describe Ishvara, all due to some Upadhi called Maya Upadhi or Prakriti Upadhi. Therefore, when Krishna says as Ishvara, Matsthani Sarva Bhutani, they are in me. He is including the Maya Upadhi in that me. Only then can he say all the beings have their basis in me. He becomes the cause of everything due to Maya Upadhi. Through Maya Upadhi alone, all the beings have their being in Paramatma. By itself, Paramatma is free from the creation because it is free from all attributes. So, with Maya alone, does Bhagavan say, Matsthani Sarva Bhutani. When I look at Paramatma as the cause of the entire Jagat, then Maya exists in Paramatma as its Shakti. In Maya alone, they exist and resolve, and from Maya, they are born. Are Bhagavan and Maya two different entities? Now we have a problem. There is no other thing except Atma, Brahman. It is non-dual. If Brahman has Maya in itself, Brahman is one thing, Maya is another, and we have two things. If fundamentally there are two, there is multiplicity, and that is not acceptable because Brahman is non-dual, Advaya. But when we say one is Brahman and the second is Maya, we really do not have this problem. That is because Maya is an interesting word. In Sanskrit, it is defined as follows. Ya ma sa maya. That which is not is Maya. That is to say that Maya has no independent reality. It really does not exist. From one standpoint, there is Maya. From the other, there is no Maya, only Brahman. If you look at Brahman as the cause of creation, it has Maya. That is why it is said, Maya Sabalam Brahma. I hope I am correct. Maya Sabalam Brahma. From the standpoint of itself, there is no Maya. There is only Sat Chit Ananda. Maya is not an independent object enjoying a reality like Sat Chit Ananda Atma, because Maya is Mithya. Mithya is defined as something that does not exist apart from the Adhisthana on which it is dependent on. Mithya is therefore Adhisthana Ananya. Just like your shirt, which has no existence apart from its fabric. Similarly, Maya is not a substance separate from Brahman. If it exists in its own right, you can say Maya and Brahman together create the world, and their getting together is the cause for creation. But they are not two independent factors because Maya is not independent from Brahman. That is why we can worship the Lord as male or female. The string of 1,000 names, Sahasranamavali, of any Devata will invoke that particular Devata as the one who is the creator of everything, sustainer of everything, destroyer of everything. That is, who is everything. Then for the goddess, for the Devi, the goddess, or Maya Shakti, the string of 1,000 names will say the same thing. She is the creatrix of everything, the sustainer of everything, the destroyer of everything. She is everything. This is another way of looking at the fact that there is only Ishvara. There is Ishvara from the standpoint of power, Shakti, and Ishvara without Shakti. To think of two different entities, Ishvara and Maya, has no meaning at all because Maya, the Shakti, is not independent of Ishvara. Like the capacity to burn is not independent of fire. Maya Shakti is not independent of Brahman because it is the power of Brahman itself. From the standpoint of viewing Brahman as the cause of everything, you say it is Brahman with the power Maya. Maya Sabalam Brahma. But there is no problem of duality. One is Satya, the other is Mithya. And Satya plus Mithya is still one Satya. when you is there a too much of breaking of my voice? I repeat once again the last line, the equation what was told by Jay, 1 plus 0 is 1 only. But there is no problem duality. One is Satya and other is Mithya. And Satya plus Mithya is still one Satya. When you stand before a mirror and see your reflection, there appears to be two of you, two heads, two mouths, 2 feet, and hundreds of other problems. But you know it is not so. You know there is still only one you because you know that the reflection is mithya. 1 plus 1 does not make 2 here. Even if you stand in a house of mirrors and see infinite reflection, there is still only one you. The only difference is all the images in the mirror are identical, but in Ishvara Shrishti, no two things look the same, not even two thumbs. The variety is infinite. Moreover, none of the reflections you see in the mirror is taken seriously. You cannot be detracted from or improved upon in a mirror. If you go to one upadhi, a concave mirror, and see you yourself elongated, or you go to another upadhi, a convex mirror, and see yourself widened, you do not get alarmed. You are amused. Why? Because you know that it is mithya. If it were real, it would be a problem. Being mithya, there is no problem. Mithya undergoes changes. Satya remains the same. That means in the Satya Vastu, there are no changes. Nama Rupas change. Vastu does not. It is the cause of all of them. It is the cause that never changes. Therefore, Paramatma plus Maya does not make two. One reality plus an infinite number of Nama Rupas is still one. From this standpoint alone, Bhagavan says, they resolve into me. Only because of this mithya was it said, Matsthani Sarva Bhutani. And from his own standpoint, Nacha Matsthani Bhutani. Again he says, Kalpakshaye Sarva Bhutani Mamikam Prakritim Yanti. Again, at the end of the Kalpa, all the beings resolve into my Prakriti. To say they go back to my Prakriti or they go back to me are both right, because the Prakriti has no separate existence other than Ishvara. When it is proved that creation is mithya, we have to accept a mithya cause, which is Maya Upadhi. Another word that is used for the Shakti of Brahman. Because of this alone, Brahman becomes the cause. Brahman, however, does not undergo any change. And therefore, as we have seen before, Vivarta Upadana Karana. Brahman is both the efficient cause and material cause. But how can Brahman be the material cause, which must necessarily undergo change to become this variegated world? Even though the creation is non-separate from the cause, Brahman cannot undergo even an apparent change to create this world. We saw that Brahman remains the same, and therefore we say it is the Vivarta Upadana Karana. There are two types of Upadana Karana. One is Vivarta Upadana Karana and the other is Parinami Upadana Karana. When the thing that is the material cause undergoes a change to become the effect, then it is called Parinami Upadana Karana. And if it does not undergo any change to become the effect, it is called Vivarta Upadana Karana. Now, from the standpoint of the world, Brahman is the Vivarta Upadana Karana because it is the cause that does not undergo any change. But whatever changes that are necessary are undergone only by Maya. Therefore, Maya is the Parinami Upadana Karana for this world. Thus, if you say Brahman is the material cause, then it is Vivarta Upadana Karana. And if you say Maya is the material cause, it is Parinami Upadana Karana. This is the takeaway line. I repeat the paragraph. There are two types of Upadana Karana. One is Vivarta Upadana Karana and the another is Parinami Upadana Karana. When the thing that is the material cause undergoes a change to become the effect, then it is called Parinami Upadana Karana. And if it does not undergo any change to become the effect, it is called Vivarta Upadana Karana. Now, from the standpoint of the world, Brahman is the Vivarta Upadana Karana because it is the cause that does not undergo any change. But whatever changes that are necessary are undergone only by Maya. Therefore, Maya is the Parinami Upadana Karana for this world. Thus, if you say Brahman is the material cause, then it is Vivarta Upadana Karana. And if you say Maya is the material cause, it is Parinami Upadana Karana. Thus, Brahman undergoes no change and at the same time makes all changes possible. It is like how the rope is the Vivarta Upadana Karana for the snake and consciousness is the Vivarta Upadana Karana for your dream. The dreamer is Chaitanya, the dream world is Chaitanya, and the dream experience is Chaitanya. But without the Chaitanya, there cannot be any creation. And therefore, Chaitanya is Vivarta Upadana Karana and your own memory becomes the Parinami Upadana Karana. Similarly, Brahman alone is the cause for the whole creation as Vivarta Upadana Karana and Maya is the Parinami Upadana Karana. Thus, through the Upadhi, it becomes efficient cause, Nimitta Karana. Through the Upadhi, it becomes material cause, Upadana Karana. So beautiful. If anyone wants me to repeat anything or share anything, just let me know. And someone will have to take over in another 5-10 minutes. Kindly help us to take over as I have to go for now, Kriya. So here beautifully Bhagavan has said, Swamiji has explained the Parinami and Vivarta Upadana Karana. Parinami Upadana Karana is a kind of Nama Rupa, because it is through the Maya we are able to see, and that is changing. And through that Upadhi only we have our own self-perception that I am this, I am that, I am Alpagnya, I am limited, I am happy or I am sad. So that is all due to the Parinami Upadana Karana. And compared to that, the Vivarta Upadana Karana is that Sat Chit Ananda Brahman. Even though it creates everything, it remains the same whole. It does not undergo any change. It remains the same Purna, Akhanda, Avyaya. And our real Swarup is that Sat Chit Ananda, which cannot be changed, which is Purna, which is Sampurna, Akhanda. Anyone wants to share before we go to the next verse? Shall we go to the next verse, or you want me to read paragraph? Let me know. Okay, I will just read the next verse, and someone else help me in reading the.
I'll take over, Bella. Don't worry. If you have to leave for the Kriya, you can leave. I can take over.
Yeah, kindly take over, Brahmaraji, from the verse 8. I will just read the verse, and you can Prakrutim swamavashtabhya visrujami punah punah bhutagramamimam krutsnam avasham prakrutervashat. Swama prakrutim, my own prakriti, avashtabhya, controlling, punah punah, again and again, imam krutsnam bhutagramam, this entire group of beings, avasham, necessarily, prakritehe, vashat, by force of prakriti, visrujami, I create, swam prakritim, avashtabhya, punah punah imam krutsnam bhutagramam, avasham, prakritehe vashat, visrujami. Keeping my own prakriti under control, again and again, I create this entire group of beings necessarily by the force of prakriti. I repeat, keeping my own prakriti under control, again and again, I create this entire group of beings necessarily by the force of prakriti. Yeah, Brahmaraji. It just reminds me that Brahma Shraya Maya. Bhagavan says by the force of Prakriti, but still that is Brahma Shraya Maya. Dhanyavad, Brahmaraji.
Thank you, Bella. I will share screen also. 1 second, so that you can be relieved. So keeping my own Prakriti under control again and again, I create this entire group of beings necessarily by the force of Prakriti. Visrijami punah punaha. Again and again I create. After the dissolution at the end of each kalpa, I again create myself. I again create, that is in commas, myself. Does that mean I undergo a change? No. Prakritim swam avashtabhya. Keeping my own prakriti, my own maya upadhi in my hands, I create. This is the difference between the Jiva and Ishvara. Ishvara keeps Maya under his control. The Jiva comes under the spell of Maya or Avidya until he is released from it. Therefore, the Lord says, keeping this Maya in my hands, I create again and again. Swam prakritim avashtabhya visrajami punah punaha. So the fundamental difference between Ishvara and Jiva is that Maya is under his control, whereas for a Jiva, Jiva is under the spell of Maya or Avidya until he is released from it. So what does he create? Bhuta Gramam Imam Kritsnam. This entire group of Bhutas, meaning the whole Jagat. What is seen by you in its entirety, I create. Aham Visrijami. One may ask, why do you do that? All my problems are only because I find myself in this creation. So why did you create all this? Why did God create the world? Avasham means it is something that has to take place. That is, without any will on the part of Ishvara, this takes place. This question, why did God create the world, has been asked millions of times. Any answer is only imaginary. The stock answer is that it is all Bhagavan's Leela. It is all a sport for the Lord. But why does Bhagavan need a sport, Leela? Is he restless or bored or lonely? If he is, then how is he the Lord? Then he is as much a samsari as me, the Jiva. The Lord answers this question by saying that he did not really create anything. One second. He did not create anything at all. Only when he has created does he have to answer this question. In the next line, he is going to say that he did not create anything. Assuming that there is a creation, we can only say that it came about without any will on his part. How then did it come? Let me read this again. The Lord answers this question by saying that he did not really create anything at all. Only when he has created does he have to answer this question. In the next line, he is going to say that he did not create anything. Assuming that there is a creation, we can only say that it came about without any will on his part. How then did it come? Prakriter Vashat. Because of the force of Prakriti alone, the creation takes place. The nature of Prakriti is to create. Not only the Lord, but you can also say the same thing. Not only the Lord, but you can also say the same thing. Why do you think about a given thing at a particular time? It is by the force of the same Prakriti. If you say, I think, you have a problem. When you say Prakriti thinks, you have no problem. If you say, I think, you have a problem. If you say, I think, you have a problem. When you say Prakriti thinks, you have no problem. What is applicable right now here for you is also applicable to Bhagavan because Atma is common and the Srishti is typical. A given thought is born in your head. That is, after all, a Srishti, even though you do not will to create a given thought. There is, of course, deliberate thinking. But what we're talking about here is a thought that just occurs in your head without your willing. Why did this particular thought occur? Why is it created? It takes place naturally. Prakriter vashat. Your will is not involved. Then, how can you assume responsibility for it? It is your thought, no doubt, but you have nothing to do with it because you have no will regarding it. This is true for a jnani or an ajnani. Both have nothing to do with the thought that occurs without any willing. So let it occur. And though there may be some cause, we are not concerned with that. It is prakriter vashat. And ajnani has another type of thought, which is born of his own will. When he wills a given thought, he will of course claim authorship for it. Because he has ahankara, he thinks he is creating the thought. The jnani will also have this type of thought, but he looks upon the so-called will as a part of prakriti. In his vision, even while thinking, he does not think. Seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, walking, etc., I perform no action at all. Pashyan, shrinvan, sprishan, jigran, ashnan, gachan, naiva kinchit karomi. This is the difference between the ajnani and jnani. Both have the experience of finding themselves with an unsolicited thought, prakriter vashat. That is a thought that comes without the will. The ajnani thinks that he created the thought because he thinks he is a karta. Then the confusion is further compounded. He assumes responsibility for the very thought that occurs without his will and feels guilty about it. Then, through therapy, etc., he tries to develop some kind of a distance, but he still has ahankara. Therefore, the problem is going to recur in one form or another. But there is also deliberate thinking on his part, for which he will certainly claim authorship because he has the notion, I am an author. A jnani, however, has eliminated the notion that he is the author of any action by seeing that Atma is akarta. If Atma is akarta, then because of the force of Prakriti alone, thoughts happen. There is no willing or wishing or any kind of action. All these just take place, and it is as though I do something and as though I do not do anything. It is as though things take place of their own accord. Prakriter vashat. Krishna says the same thing. This creation just takes place. This is the answer to the question, why the creation? The karmas of all the jivas form the prakriti. When pralaya comes to an end, those karmas have to find their expression and the manifest creation begins at the beginning of the kalpa, kalpadau. Bhagavan brings the creation into being, keeping the prakriti under his control. Prakritim swam avashtabhya. It means that he does not come under the spell of prakriti, but this I is Satchidananda Atma, which does not will anything to happen. Then who wills? In the presence of Bhagavan with reference to Prakriti, there is a will. It is said in the Taittiriya Upanishad, So kamayata bahushyam prajayeti satapotapyata satapastapva. He desired, may I become many. Now, one can ask, why should he desire? Then we have to say that the desiring is also from the point of view of the Prakriti alone. Prakriter vashat. From the standpoint of Prakriti, Atma seemingly desires. That is why Bhagavan says, keeping Prakriti under my control, Prakritim swam avashtabhya. Without his willing, purely due to Prakriti, this creation takes place. And it is a creation of great variety because the jivas have to undergo many different kinds of experiences according to the karmas they have earned. Because of that, there are varieties of bodies with their own unique sukshma sharira, all created according to the karma of jivas. Now there arises another question here. When according to their punya papa karmas, they are given bodies and situations, etc., how is Bhagavan doing anything? When a king gives money, protection, punishment, etc., according to the services and attitudes of his citizens, he seems to be the one meting out punishment and reward. The same philosophy extends to Bhagavan. If you do the right thing, you are rewarded. If you do not do the right thing, you are punished. Even a dog is trained like that. If a person is well behaved, he is the beneficiary, and if not, he is adversely affected. By doing what is proper, one is born in a good family, has a good body, and everything goes well for him. Another person is born in a situation full of disadvantages. Each person is affected by his own dharma and adharma, which are subject to his choice. Whenever there is a choice, there is definitely kartritva, doership. Bhagavan has no such problem because everything that is happening is due to Prakriti. He does not really participate in anything. When he says, I do not create anything at all, the word I refers to Satchidananda Atma, and that is the only Atma there is. In the presence of this Atma, Prakriti takes care of everything. There is one more point to be understood here, and that is, without this presence of Satchit Ananda Atma, the Prakriti cannot do anything. If we say so, then we will be saying what Sankhyas propound. That is, Prakriti does everything and Atma remains unconnected. But that is not acceptable. Prakriti and Paramatma are not two parallel realities. Prakriti is not independent of Paramatma. It is superimposed upon Paramatma, entirely depending upon Paramatma for its existence. Prakriti itself cannot create. Atma also cannot create by itself. They somehow come together to bring about this creation. But they are not two different entities enjoying the same degree of reality. One is Satya, the other is Mithya. So there continues to be only one. If this is not understood, we will end up with duality. That is why Lord Krishna can say, I created everything. I did not create anything. If it is not understood, it sounds like a contradiction. In this creation, there is a great deal of pain. Bhagavan seems to be responsible for all this. He created man with a wonderful body, senses, and mind. And at the same time, he created some mosquitoes, etc., to torment him. The human being has to fight against unknown sources of pain throughout his life. The one who created this pain must necessarily be affected by all this. Bhagavan says, no. Whatever the creation is, it is all due to the force of Prakriti, Prakriter Vashat, and I am not involved in it. These karmas do not affect me at all. I think we'll stop here. If anyone wants a repeat of any of the paragraphs, please let me know. And I think yesterday Sarlaji had a question. I think that is very beautifully answered here. We'll just close our eyes and let me just chant the two shlokas that we did today. In fact, the 3 shlokas that we did today. And we'll come up with our Manana.
Hari Om Brahmaraji, may I request that Taittiriya Upanishad shloka, just if you don't mind If you can chant after the shloka also.
Yeah, I will chant. Yeah. So we started from verse 6 today. Yathakashasthito nityam vayu sarvatra go mahan tatha sarvani bhutani matsthani tyupadharaya. Just as the vast air which goes everywhere always exists in space, similarly, may you understand that all beings exist in me. Sarvabhutani kaunteya prakritim yanti mamika kalpakshaye punastani kalpadau visrujamyaham. All beings, O Arjuna, go to my Prakriti at the dissolution of the cycle of creation. Again, at the beginning of the cycle, I create them. Prakritim swamavashtabhya visrujami punah punaha bhutagramamimam kritsnam avasham prakriter vashat. Keeping my own Prakriti under control, again and again, I create this entire group of beings necessarily by the force of Prakriti. And the Taittiriya Upanishad shloka that Belaji requested. So kamayata bahushyam prajayeti. It ends over here in this PDF, but there is another thing to that which I remember. So kamayata bahushyam prajayeti satapotapyata satapastapva. So here the only reference to Taittiriya Upanishad is because it is mentioned that with reference to Prakriti, there is a will. May I become many. So kamayata, he desired. Bahushyam prajayet, may I become many. So we'll close our eyes once and then reflect upon all that we learned, listened to, and let's come up with our own takeaways. Jai Gurudev. The central point that these three shlokas have given up, have propounded, apart from the concept of creation, dissolution, of Ishvara, Maya, the Upadhis, the Upadana Karana, the Vivarta Upadana Karana, and the Parinami Upadana Karana, the central theme here is of Advaita. That is, there is only one, Satchidananda Atma. Whatever comes out of it, that is as though created. All this is as though created. The Jagat is as though created. Similarly, Prakriti is that that actually has its existence has its dependence on Atma. Prakriti or Maya is mithya. Sum total of all mithya, if you put up together, that is Maya. So therefore, from that Maya, all this is created. So when he says, I create everything, it is not Satchidananda Atma that is creating. It is from this, his aspect, the Prakriti aspect of the Satchidananda that is that the Jagat is getting created. And that has a will, that has a desire. And into that, everything gets dissolved. Yeah. So, and Sarlaji, you had your question you wanted to ask yesterday. Please, can you ask? I think it was so very beautifully answered by the aspect of thoughts coming Prakriti
Yeah, it's
Vashat.
clear now. It's
Correct?
clear now. Yeah,
It
yeah.
is clear now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm so amazed at how your question came up just before we did this, and how today's reading actually kind of spot on answered your question.
Yeah.
No?
Yes,
Your
correct.
question was, how do thoughts come? Are they also from
Yeah. From Maya.
Maya?
Actually, what here is said, aham Satchidananda. Aham means it is Satchidananda, but aham is Maya like. It is all not doing anything, nothing. And because of the Maya, Prakriti is existing. And in Prakriti, everything is existing and dissolving. Dissolution is happening in Prakriti only. So whatever is coming, it is out of Prakriti only. And it is a Maya of that Purusha, or that means whatever
Atma.
the Atma, like
Yeah.
that. So it is very crystal clear now.
Mm.
Thank you. You can elaborate if you want, please, Brahmaraji.
Yeah. I think, see, what the gist of what we read regarding the thoughts is that they had contrasted, and first of all, they contrasted Ishvara and Jiva, wherein Ishvara has Maya under his control, whereas Jiva comes under the spell of Maya. That is a fundamental difference. Then second is the thoughts that come. There are some thoughts, or most of the thoughts that all of us get, they don't seek permission. They don't have, it is not like you have deliberately wanted to think of that thought and it came. Thoughts just come without our will. That is because of Prakriti. Whereas there are some thoughts that we think, you will that thought to come and it happens.
Karta.
And then
Because of the karta, that thoughts come.
Yeah. Because an Ajnani is still in the Karta Bhav, he is that Ahankara, he thinks, I am the creator of this thought. Whereas for a Jnani, for him, whatever he does, it is only Prakriter Vashat. He does not claim being the author of anything. So Jnani is likened to the Atma, Satchidananda Atma, wherein he is just there. It does not affect him at all, and he is in that akartritva bhava, the non-doership. And which is why karmas don't affect him, just like how karmas don't affect Ishvara. Whereas for a jiva who's still reeling in ajnana and avidya, under the spell of Maya, he has to go through all his karmas. And again, it is only knowledge that jiva is the same as Jivatma is the same as Paramatma. That is the only thing that will redeem him of this, will relieve him of this so-called bound existence. And that is a fundamental difference between the Sankhya school of thought. Sankhya gives, I think, equal importance to Prakriti and Purusha. It's almost like duality. Whereas here in Advaita philosophy, that Adi Shankaracharya propounded and propagated, which is what we are following, which is what is the central theme also in the Bhagavad Gita. It says the Prakriti is born of Ishvara. It is not separate. They're not parallel entities. So one is Satya, the other is Mithya. Prakriti is Mithya and Atma is Satya.
Very beautiful. Today's session was very beautiful.
Dr. Renu says 60,000 thoughts per day. Yeah, and more. We don't know how many thoughts, how many times, the more rajas we have in us, the more thoughts we have, which is very, very apt now when we go back to chapter 6. Does anyone want to share anything else before we go to chapter 6? This is exactly what Arjuna's dilemma is. How do I control this mind that is full of agitation? Right? That is what he had asked. And then Bhagavan replies, Shri Bhagavanuvacha asamshayam mahabaho manodurnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha gruhyate. Is anyone wanting to share the summary of this? If anyone has gone through the PDF, I wasn't able to. I'm keeping it open for anyone, few who's there right now. Yeah, okay. So, Shri Bhagavan, Lord Krishna, Uvacha said, Mahabahu, O mighty armed Arjuna, Asamshayam, no doubt, Manaha, mind, Durnigraham, very difficult to control, Chalam, agitated, Tu, but, Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Arjuna, Abhyasena, by practice, Cha, and Vairagyena, by objectivity, Grihyate, is mastered. Shri Bhagavanuvacha, Mahabaho Asamshayam Manaha Durnigraham Chalam Tu Kaunteya Abhyasena Cha Vairagyena Grihyate. Shri Bhagavan said, no doubt, O mighty armed Arjuna, the agitated mind is very difficult to control. But, O son of Kunti, by practice and objectivity, it is mastered. So one of the most important takeaway shlokas for a sadhak is this one shloka in chapter 6, where Bhagwan is directly giving us the solution. Here, Krishna first addresses Arjuna as, O mighty armed, Mahabaho. Being a great warrior, Arjuna was of course considered to be mighty. But his might, his strength should include his mastery over his mind. One's strength may be useful for knocking the heads of others, but it is not enough to take care of one's own silly mind. Krishna confirms this here by saying, Asamshayam, no doubt, indicating that there was no doubt that the mind is restless and difficult to master. Who says the mind is not restless? To recognize that the mind is restless is to have won half the battle. This is exactly what Gurudev says for anything. Supposing you want to get rid of anger, he says, the very fact that you want to get rid of anger itself, half the battle is won. So similarly, to recognize that the mind is restless is to have won half the battle. Suppose someone tells me that his or her mind is agitated, and I say that getting agitated is not good at all, that it does not solve anything, and therefore do not get agitated. All that will happen is that the person will become more agitated. What use is such advice? It is not as though the person wants to get agitated. Therefore, this particular advice is useless. Telling someone not to get agitated does not help at all. Whereas, if one accepts agitation as the nature of the mind, half the battle is won. This is so in line with what the central theme of our Art Excel Yes courses, of course, all our courses are. Instead of telling a child, don't get angry, uh, don't get upset, tell them that how not to do it by teaching our, breathing techniques, how not to get angry, rather than just telling them not to get angry. And same applies to us also as adults, because nowhere in school have been taught how to handle the mind. So don't get angry is not the solution. Accepting anger first, that is the first step. Acceptance is the first step. In the program of recovery sponsored by Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step is for the person to say that he or she has no power over alcohol. This has to be accepted first. Otherwise, there is no hope of recovery. The same thing is true with everything, not just alcohol. I have no power over anger. I have no power over this restless mind. When I accept this, then half the battle is won. I'm just reminded of the Disha Pranayam that we do. We say, it is not that I am getting angry, it is the angels that rule the direction north. That is because of that it's because of their influence I am, and therefore you surrender. So you first accept that you have no power over whatever emotions that are going on in your mind, even the restlessness of the mind. Krishna accepts this one great psychological fact, that the nature of the mind is agitation. One does not try to remove the agitation. One simply accepts that it is agitation. Do not get agitated over agitation, thinking that it is something you are going to solve. Also, do not think that your mind is something peculiar, because it is not. Any mind is agitation. Agitation is the nature of the mind, because the mind has to change. It is meant to change. Try to imagine a mind that has a constant thought. A constant thought means that you cannot see anything else. 10 miles ago, you saw one tree, and still the tree is right in front of you. Nothing else is there. No car, no person, nothing. You would not even survive with such a mind. The mind must necessarily change. Just as in a movie, the frame must always be changing at a certain speed for you to be able to see objects, movement, etc. Here too, the mind has to keep changing all the time so that you can see. This is why the mind is called kshanika. One particular thought is always kshanika, meaning that it does not even last for a second. Just to say the word second involves so many parts, so many frames, so many changes, all of which are kshanika. This is the nature of the vritti, the thought. Even to recognize this fact, the mind has to be kshanika. How so beautiful. The mind necessarily has to change. Otherwise, we cannot survive with a mind that has a constant thought in it. Since the nature of the mind is kshanika, naturally it is going to change. Therefore, Krishna says, there is no doubt about it, Arjuna, the mind is chala, chanchala, restless. The word chala also means agitation. And being chala, it is very difficult to control. Manaha durnigraham chalam. In other words, he agrees with what Arjuna has said about the mind, that it is as difficult to have mastery over the mind as over the wind. By repeating what Arjuna has said, he's saying that the nature of the mind should be accepted as such. Accept the fact that the mind is agitation, that it has its own roots, that it has its own logic and that therefore it is never illogical. This is again coming back to Prakriter Vashat. It is because of the Prakriti. We always think that the mind is illogical, but that is not correct. The mind does have its own logic. If we suddenly think of something, we think that the thought has come from nowhere. But it has not come from nowhere. It has come from somewhere, meaning there is some logic for it. But why, when nothing has happened outside, when everything is calm, do I suddenly have this thought? This simply means that outside situations are not required for a thought to occur. We have enough going on inside for this to happen. Why, for example, in the midst of meditation, do I suddenly think of okras? And why, when I'm talking and wanting to come up with some funny word, did this word okra come to me? There must be some logic for it. The point here is that whatever suddenly occurs in your head has its own logic. This again brings us back to Prakriter Vashat. I think we'll stop here. We'll do this. There is nothing illogical in the world. We'll continue this tomorrow. Just close our eyes and just reflect on what we learned just now. Jai Gurudev. So rather than fighting the agitation, the restless mind, and all the negative emotions, first step is to accept. And when you accept, half the battle is won. And there is a reason, there is a logic behind why every thought comes up. Only that we don't understand, but there is some background behind that. But that a thought comes without our will, without forcing it upon, is a fact. Yeah, if anyone wants to share, please do.
It is said that mind is a field by itself. It is just not individual. Gurudev says thoughts are just like bubbles. It's going. Somebody else's thought will enter your head. That's why you should keep our mind, shuddhi. Otherwise, all sorts of thoughts will enter. It's just like if you keep your house clean, the other pollution and all coming entering into the house is less, or the insects and all that. Otherwise, if you keep, dirty, easily it will attract. In the same way, our mind also, keep it clean, very rarely it will come and affect you.
So beautiful. It is called, there is one beautiful Vedic stanza, I don't know which Upanishad, where it is from the source, but Anu Badraha Kratavo, it is like, let noble thoughts come to me from all directions. Such a sublime prayer that is. Let noble thoughts come to me from all directions. That's such a powerful prayer. Let me get the whole shloka and maybe I'll share it in the group. So we'll stop here today and we'll continue tomorrow. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Gurudev.